How could you be so selfish? My father shouted, his face reddening as he paced across the living room of our family's vacation home in Bear Lake, Utah. You have more than enough, Louise. Your sister needs that money for her new business venture, and yet here you are, clutching bills like we're strangers instead of family. I stood frozen, stunned into silence, the thin paper of the property tax bill trembling in my hand. What was supposed to be a casual Sunday dinner had twisted into an ambush, an interrogation about why I wasn't pulling my weight anymore. I am Louise Walsh, 33 years old back then, and a self-taught day trader. My entire career was built from nothing. Endless sleepless nights spent studying market patterns, making risky calls, and climbing my way up through sheer persistence. I wasn't born into money, and there was no safety net waiting for me. Everything I had, I earned. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I'd love to see how far this story travels. And yet for the past 5 years, I'd been quietly shouldering the financial burdens of my family. I'd been paying the property taxes on this very lake house, covering my younger sister Megan's car payments, even footing the bill for family vacations, all without complaint. It was my way of giving back. My parents had raised me, sacrificed for me, or so I thought. "Dad," I finally managed, my voice steadier than my shaking hands. "I've been paying for everything for years. The property taxes, Megan's business trips, Mum's medical bills insurance wouldn't cover. I've never asked for a dime back, but I can't keep doing this forever." My mother sat silently on the couch, eyes fixed on her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wouldn't look at me, and that silence, that refusal to meet my gaze, stung worse than my father's shouting. "We gave you everything growing up," Dad shot back, ignoring my words completely. "And now that we need you, you're abandoning us while your sister is trying to make something of herself." That's when I noticed it. An envelope peeking out from beneath a glossy magazine on the coffee table. The corner of an official-looking document stuck out. The bold lettering caught my eye. Trust Fund. And beneath that, clear as day, Megan Walsh. My stomach dropped. My fingers reached instinctively, pulling it free before my father could stop me. "Louise, that's private," he snapped, lunging forward, but too late. I was already scanning the document, the black and white print cutting into me sharper than any blade. My hands trembled as the truth revealed itself. My father had created a substantial trust fund for Megan. Only Megan. The same father who told me year after year there wasn't enough money for my college tuition, who forced me to work 2 jobs while I studied, the same father who let me shoulder their luxury lifestyle, vacations, repairs, taxes, all while quietly securing my sister's future. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I whispered, the question coming out ragged, almost broken. My whole life suddenly snapped into cruel focus. The favoritism, the unequal expectations, the constant demands, framed as family obligation. It all made sense now. Dad yanked the papers from my hand, but the damage was done. The numbers were already burned into my memory. $350,000 set aside for Megan, with future contributions promised. All while I'd been told over and over that money was tight. "You weren't supposed to see that," he muttered, stuffing the envelope back under the magazine. "Clearly," I said, my voice flat. "I suppose that explains why you never helped with my student loans." The memories poured in like floodwater. Megan, at 16, beaming behind the wheel of a brand new car gifted by my parents, while I took the city bus until I could afford a beat-up Honda. Megan's dance lessons, her summer camps, her private university tuition, all funded, all celebrated. While I worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop just to stay afloat in college. My car breaking down, me begging for help with repairs, only to be told there's no extra money. The truth was brutal, undeniable. It wasn't circumstances. It wasn't bad timing. My parents had simply decided Megan mattered more. "Sweetheart," My mother finally spoke, her voice soft and pleading. Your sister needs more help than you do. You've always been so independent, so capable. We're proud of how well you've done on your own. The twisted logic nearly knocked the air from my lungs. I was being punished for my success. Megan was rewarded for her dependence. All those times I asked for help, I said slowly, shaking my head as the memories resurfaced. When I was working nights in college, barely sleeping. When my car broke down. When I needed a deposit for my first apartment. You told me you couldn't help. But the money was there. It just wasn't for me. Dad shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. Investment decisions aren't that simple, Louise. We had to think about the future. Just not my future, I shot back. I thought about the property taxes I had been covering, $8,700 a year for 5 years straight, plus the $12,000 I paid for roof repairs on this very vacation home, Mum's medical bills, Megan's car, family trips, thousands upon thousands of dollars poured out of my account without hesitation, while they were secretly building a nest egg for her. The taxes are due next month, Dad said briskly, sliding the bill across the table like none of this had happened. And the homeowners association fees have gone up again. I stared at him, incredulous. Even after I'd uncovered their secret, he still expected me to pay. The audacity left me breathless. Something inside me shifted then, a recalibration of my very being. I had been played for a fool. But that ended today. I'll take care of it, I said quietly, picking up the bill. My father visibly relaxed, not noticing the resolve hardening behind my eyes. The drive back to my apartment in downtown Salt Lake City was a blur. The snow-capped mountains that usually brought me peace loomed against the darkening sky like silent judges. Once home, I ignored my buzzing phone, undoubtedly my father calling to ensure I wouldn't forget the tax bill, and pulled out my laptop. My fingers trembled as I opened a folder I had kept meticulously for years, but never imagined I'd need. Financial contributions, family. The spreadsheet appeared on the screen, line after line of expenses I had covered. Property taxes, $43,500 across 5 years. Megan's car payments, $11,680. Roof repairs, $12,000. Mum's knee surgery uncovered by insurance, $8,200. Family vacations, $22,400. The total glared back at me, $97,680, nearly $100,000. Money I would never see again. My phone buzzed again with a text from Megan. Dad says you're being difficult about the taxes. Don't be selfish, Louise. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the empty apartment. Selfish. That was the word they used. Another text, this one from my father. We're counting on you for those taxes. Don't let us down. No thank you, no acknowledgement, just expectation. I closed my eyes and exhaled. This was no longer about money. This was about truth, about respect, about finally ending years of manipulation disguised as family duty. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a storm, one that would tear open every hidden truth in my family. And for the first time in years, I felt something powerful building in me. Not anger, not grief, power. I remember sitting at my small oak dining table, the one I'd bought second-hand 20 years ago, staring at the stack of papers spread across it. My kitchen clock ticked so loudly it felt like a hammer in my ears. I had the bank statements, cancelled checks, wire receipts, and even emails from my parents, all proof that I had been quietly paying for nearly every major family expense for years. It was all there, in black and white, undeniable. But the one page that haunted me was the trust account disclosure I'd stumbled upon in my father's study, over $350,000 earmarked exclusively for Megan. My younger sister. The golden child, the one who never opened her wallet, because she never had to. For a moment, I felt like I was going to vomit. 5 years. 5 years of draining my retirement contributions, skipping vacations, passing on medical checkups because I was short on cash, while my parents preserved a financial cushion for Megan big enough to cover a lifetime of indulgence. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. No more, I whispered to myself. That night, I called Joseph Klein, my financial advisor of 15 years. Joseph had guided me through every major life decision, my mortgage refinancing, my modest retirement planning, even a small stock portfolio that had kept me afloat when my company downsized. When I explained what I'd discovered, Joseph went quiet. Then he asked me to send him everything I had. By the next morning, I was sitting in his office in downtown Minneapolis. The glass walls reflected my nervous face back at me as Joseph spread my documents across his mahogany desk. He read each one carefully, flipping back and forth, muttering under his breath. Finally, he looked up. "Louise," he said gently, "you've contributed over $120,000 in the last 5 years. That's money directly siphoned out of your future. And according to what I'm seeing, your parents had the means to cover these expenses without you. This wasn't about necessity, it was about control." The word control stung me like a slap. "I need confirmation," I told him, my voice trembling. That's when Joseph recommended a forensic accountant. Enter Victor Hernandez. A sharp-eyed man in his 50s with the patience of a surgeon, Victor dissected every line of my parents' financial setup. Weeks later, he handed me a detailed report. "Ms. Walker," he said, sliding the folder toward me, "your contributions are actually higher than your advisor estimated. $118,745 to be exact, when you include both direct transfers and indirect payments like property tax drafts pulled from your account." My mouth went dry. Nearly $120,000 gone. And all while my sister's trust fund quietly collected interest, untouched. I sat there, staring at the neat numbers on the page, and something inside me hardened. The Louise who had always been the fixer, the provider, the invisible backbone, she was dying. A new Louise was being born. That evening I drafted a letter. It was short, sharp, and final. Effective immediately, I will no longer provide financial assistance for family expenses. Please do not contact me regarding bills, repairs, or taxes. I have retained legal counsel regarding past contributions. I recommend you adjust accordingly. I mailed a copy to my parents' home and emailed one to Megan. The response was immediate. My father called first, his voice filled with the usual authority he had wielded over me since childhood. "Louise, what the hell is this nonsense? You're overreacting. We've always been a family that takes care of each other." I bit back my fury. "Funny," I said, "because I've been taking care of everyone while you saved a fortune for Megan. I'm done." He hung up on me. Hours later, Megan appeared at my front door. She didn't knock softly. She pounded like she owned the place. When I opened the door, her face was flushed with rage. "What is this crap about you cutting off Mom and Dad?" she shouted, stepping inside without being invited. I folded my arms. "It's exactly what it says. I'm done being the family ATM." Her jaw dropped. "Are you seriously jealous of me? Is that what this is about? Because I have a trust fund?" I laughed bitterly. "Jealous? No, Megan. Betrayed? Absolutely. While you were spending weekends in Aspen and ordering luxury handbags, I was skipping mammogram appointments because I couldn't afford the copay. Does that sound like family to you?" She blinked, caught off guard. For a second I saw doubt flicker in her eyes, but then she snapped back. "You're dramatic. Dad said you'd pull something like this. You always play the victim." "Get out," I said quietly, my voice sharper than I intended. She huffed, turned on her heel, and stormed out. The slam of my front door rattled the picture frames on my wall. I stood there, trembling, both terrified and berated. For the first time in my life, I'd drawn a line in the sand. The days that followed were chaos. My father sent furious texts about how ungrateful I was. My mother remained silent, hiding behind her loyalty to him. Megan blasted me in group chats with cousins, painting me as selfish. But the truth has a way of breaking through. I sent copies of Victor's forensic report to a few trusted relatives. One by one, the responses trickled in: shock, disbelief, then quiet support. "Aunt Louise, I had no idea you were paying for everything. Your parents always acted like Megan was just lucky, not bankrolled. This isn't fair to you." For once, I wasn't alone. I knew the real storm was coming. My parents wouldn't let this go. There would be a showdown. But this time, I had armor, evidence, documentation, and a voice that refused to be silenced. I poured myself a glass of red wine that Friday night, curled up in my armchair, and whispered the words that had been buried for decades. I deserve better. And for the first time, I believed them. The invitation arrived not as a question, but as a command. Family meeting, Sunday, 2 p.m. Our house. Be there. My father's text was short, clipped, and carried the same authority he'd used my whole life to make me obey. But this time, as I read it on my phone, I didn't feel the usual dread. I felt something new, steel in my spine. By Sunday, I had my documents neatly organized in a navy blue binder: receipts, bank statements, wire transfers, Victor Hernandez's forensic report, Joseph Klein's advisories, all tabbed and highlighted. For 64 years, I had been the compliant daughter, but today I would walk in as a woman who had finally seen the truth. The air in my parents' living room was thick when I arrived. My father sat in his recliner like a king on his throne, my mother beside him with her hands folded, eyes downcast. Megan was already there, arms crossed, glaring at me as if I were a criminal about to be tried. To my surprise, several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins had been invited too. Apparently, my father wanted an audience. "Sit down," he barked. I remained standing. "I'll stand, thank you." A ripple of tension moved through the room. My mother shifted uncomfortably, but my father pressed on. "Your little stunt has embarrassed this family," he thundered. "You've turned relatives against us, airing dirty laundry. What's gotten into you, Louise? You've always been dependable, but lately you've become selfish." The word hit me like a bullet, but instead of bleeding, I grew stronger. I opened my binder, pulled out the first tab, and held up a receipt. Selfish? My voice was calm, even. 5 years of mortgage payments on the lake house. Checks written from my account, signed and cashed. That's $48,000. I laid the papers on the coffee table. A murmur moved through the relatives. Next tab. Property taxes, drafted directly from my bank, $22,000. Another set of papers hit the table. Medical bills, maintenance costs, even Megan's credit card overdraft one Christmas. Total? I flipped to Victor's summary sheet and slid it across the table. $118,745. Every penny from me. The room was silent, except for the crackle of the fireplace. My father's face turned crimson. "You're twisting this. Families help each other. You offered." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "Offered? Or manipulated into believing it was my duty while you preserved a $350,000 trust for Megan? Tell me, Dad, why was there never one for me?" Gasps echoed around the room. Megan's smug expression faltered. My mother's eyes glistened white with tears, but she said nothing. My Uncle Robert spoke up from the sofa. "Is this true, Frank? You've had a trust for Megan all this time?" My father's jaw clenched. "It's none of your business how I manage my finances. Oh, but it became everyone's business the moment you let Louise bleed herself dry while pretending the family was broke, Aunt Cheryl snapped. Megan finally erupted. You all act like I'm some kind of villain. I didn't ask for the trust. It's not my fault Dad loves me enough to secure my future. Her words hung in the air like poison. I turned toward her, my voice steady but sharp. Loved you enough? No, Megan. He chose you. Over me. Over fairness. Over honesty. And you've basked in it, knowing full well I was covering for everyone. Don't pretend you didn't notice. She opened her mouth, then shut it. For once, she had no comeback. My father slammed his fist on the armrest. Enough! I will not sit here and be attacked in my own house. I closed my binder with a snap. I'm not here to attack. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. I will no longer subsidize this family. I will no longer be guilted into silence. And if repayment isn't discussed, I'll pursue legal options. That's not a threat. It's a promise. A shocked hush fell over the room. Never in my life had I spoken to my father that way. It was my cousin Emily who finally broke the silence. She's right, she said softly. Louise has been carrying the weight for all of you. That isn't family. That's exploitation. Others began to murmur agreement. Some shook their heads at my parents. The tide was turning, and for once it wasn't in their favor. My father rose from his recliner, towering over me, his voice low and menacing. You'll regret this rebellion, Louise. Don't think you can shame me into submission. I met his gaze, unflinching. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm freeing myself. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. Frank, maybe she's right. Quiet, he snapped, silencing her instantly. And in that moment, I realized something painful but liberating. My father would never change. He would rather destroy me than admit wrongdoing. But the room, my family, was no longer united under his control. Cracks had formed. Truth had seeped in. When I walked out that day, binder tucked under my arm, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The confrontation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Louise, the obedient daughter. I was Louise, the fighter. And the battle was far from over. The weeks after the family meeting were eerily quiet. My phone, once buzzing with constant demands and passive-aggressive reminders about bills, now sat mostly silent. My father hadn't called since that day, though I knew silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I poured my energy into myself for the first time in decades. I went on long walks by Lake Harriet, signed up for a ceramics class, and even joined a book club. Each small act felt like rebellion, a reclaiming of the woman I'd lost somewhere between my parents' demands and Megan's entitlement. But I knew the storm wasn't over. It was Megan who showed up again, this time not with rage in her eyes, but with hesitation. She stood on my porch one Thursday evening, clutching a leather purse like a lifeline. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I let her in, though part of me wanted to slam the door. She sat at my kitchen table, staring at her hands. "Look," she began, "I was awful to you at the meeting. I said things I shouldn't have. I didn't know how much you'd been paying. I thought Dad covered most of it." I crossed my arms. "You thought wrong, and you didn't bother to ask." Her shoulders slumped. "You're right. I didn't. I've been selfish. I just assumed things were easier for me because that's how it's always been." Silence stretched between us. For the first time in our lives, Megan looked less like my spoiled little sister and more like a lost child. Then she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a cashier's check, enough to cover that year's property taxes. "I used part of my trust," she admitted. "Dad doesn't know, but I thought maybe it's time I contribute too." I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the Megan I knew. It wasn't absolution, but it was a crack in her armor. "Why now?" I asked softly. "Because you were right," she whispered, "about everything. I don't want to be the sister who took while you gave. I can't undo the past, but maybe I can change the future." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. The next Sunday, Megan called a meeting. This time, not at our parents' house, but at mine. She faced our father directly. "Dad," she said firmly, "I paid the taxes this year, out of my trust." His face darkened. "You what?" "It's my money," she replied, her voice steady. "And I'm done watching you drain Louise while protecting me. If you won't treat us equally, I'll make sure I do." The room fell silent. My father's authority, once absolute, cracked like glass. My mother looked between us, her lips trembling, but said nothing. For once, I didn't step in to soften the blow. I let the silence do its work. After a long pause, my Uncle Robert leaned forward. "Frank, enough's enough. You can't keep pretending this is fair. Either you split those trusts evenly, or you'll lose more than Louise. You'll lose all of us." Others nodded. My father's grip on the family was slipping, and he knew it. He tried to recover, blustering about "my money, my rules," but the tide had shifted. For the first time, his words carried no weight. In the end, Megan and I walked out together. We weren't sisters healed, not yet, but we were sisters allied, and that was more than I'd ever expected. Weeks later, paperwork arrived from my father's attorney, a revised amendment. My trust was funded at the same level as Megan's. Equal, balanced, a lifetime of inequality, finally corrected on paper. I sat at my dining table, staring at the document. Part of me wanted to cheer, another part wanted to cry, but mostly I felt free. Free from silence, free from guilt, free from being the family's invisible workhorse. That night I lit a candle by the window, poured myself a glass of wine, and whispered to the night sky, "This is my quiet revenge." Not through anger, not through shouting, but through truth, resilience, and finally being seen. At 64, I had reclaimed my voice, my worth, and my future, and this time no one could take it away.